I have the pleasure of introducing Katie Ginsberg. Katie is the founder and the executive director of the Children's Environmental Literacy Foundation, which is an educational program that deals with consumption conflict, which impressively has been implemented in more than 4,000 schools and impacted over 1 million students, according to her biography. So, Katie.
Thank you so much. I am so humbled and grateful to be at this conference this year, which for our organization is celebrating our 15th anniversary, as is our day. I'll be honest, I feel like after all the conversation that we've heard the last day and a half about the implications for education with regards to the issues that we're facing and all of the opportunities and solutions as well, I feel like there's a bit of pressure. I'm the only one here talking about K-12 education specifically, and I am by far not as expert in the room on the topic as some who spoke earlier, Professor Orr in particular. But I am excited and feel earnest in my sharing with you that there is a way of approaching K-12 education that works to bring in the habits of heart, the habits of hand, and the way we see the world, as we've been talking about the last couple of days. So my organization focuses on the folks who see our children 280 days a year and 5 days a week. It's a lot of time, and that's the educators. And so our work with the educators are focusing on developing the competencies of what we refer to as Earth citizens. And those competencies are things that we just heard about are definitely necessary to succeed in programs that are evolving like ASUs around the country. So this is probably a familiar image to you, both the plastics in the ocean part and the failed test. And this is, as we all know in this room, how we've been doing on the environmental literacy in our country. And to the point that was made earlier this morning, it's also how we're doing on our tests of civics and civics engagement. But it's not really a problem of having enough information. We all know we have far too much in most cases, and really what is at heart of the problem is we're starving for wisdom. And I'm nodding to our Indigenous brothers and sisters who brought that to our attention, and we need to think about that more often. So really, it's not a shortage of wisdom or information. We have had far too much of it, and in our country, in fact, for the last however many years, we've had environmental education as part of our education. It's been delivered mostly as information, and that's where we find ourselves as illiterate. Thank you. K-12 education is definitely a big part of the solution, but not just any kind of K-12 education, as we know. Education for sustainability includes a lot of the skills and the values and the knowledge and the action that we've been hearing about the last day. And with that lever, we can move the world toward one with more Earth citizens. In K-12 education, there are a lot of stakeholder groups, as in any complicated system. And one of the most effective ways we have seen in changing that system is by working with all of those stakeholders. Not just the teachers and the administrators and the students, but also the facilities managers and community experts in the school community. Together, the intersection of these stakeholder groups form the possibility for the next generation to become Earth citizens. Let me go back. And more and more schools are pursuing this path, and for that are being recognized. As many of you know, in Arne Duncan's administration, he passed legislation to acknowledge the green ribbon schools, which are largely associated with facilities and operations improvements, but also incorporates how their students are learning in the classroom, what they're learning in the classroom, and what actions they're taking outside of the classroom. One of the districts that we have worked with is in Orange County, New York. It's a very rural area called Warwick Valley. And they are actually this year's Green Ribbon Award winner because they had not just a visionary administration, but they had a team of committed teachers and a community that was supportive. So through an energy performance contract that they were awarded, the district was able to install a 10-acre solar field, which is now allowing them to be fully off the grid. But this would be, something that in the past might have gone unnoticed in the curriculum and in the culture of the school. But in their case, this became an opportunity to learn. And with so many of these other facilities upgrades that more and more schools are pursuing, there is that opportunity to connect what the students are learning in the classroom with what is happening on their campus. In Warwick's case, they have a number of things happening, connecting with their facilities changes. And one is this app, which is looking at the different metrics that students can then incorporate into their math lessons. So connecting all of the disciplines and the outcomes of learning are what we call the big ideas of sustainability. And these are concepts that from kindergarten all the way up through high school graduation are the big concepts we feel are necessary for students to succeed and move on in their college and career with sustainability. Equilibrium is an important concept that is often just maybe tested on a multiple choice test, but not really felt by students. Long-term effects is certainly a concept that is important for everyone to embody in retraining our multitasking, short-term attention to consider and make decisions based on multiple generations. Place is a concept that we've heard a lot about this week. If we don't know our place, we can't love our place. If we don't love our place, we don't care for our place. And all too often, school just becomes not a place at all, but a place of not a lot of excitement for students. So the more we can focus on place and having a connection to your community, the more possible it is to develop the Earth citizens' competencies. Ability to make a difference. There's nothing greater than student voice and student advocacy. And so if there are ways for us to incorporate that as part of the curriculum, it's essential. Fairness and equity, that's been a theme throughout this AREDAY conference, but is not often incorporated into curriculum. And these other concepts related to sustainability build up to understanding the balance between a vital economy, having social equity, and of course, environmental integrity. One of the other themes that I've heard, and today in particular, is about systems thinking. Systems thinking is not something that we were educated in, at least not in thinking that way, nor were teachers. And so part of our training is focusing on helping teachers engage in some of the competencies of systems thinking. Here they are, I'm looking at a pumpkin life cycle and understanding how that happens from the seed to consumption as pie, but all the inputs and outputs and feedback loops that are part of that system. So we go through a number of foundational systems thinking activities with the teachers to start thinking about connections and unintended consequences, and ways that they can bring that into their teaching. With the teachers, we're modeling what they can do with their students. Here, they're in the middle of the web of life, understanding how different parts of the living world are connected. This is an activity that demonstrates the balance and communication, and again, unintended consequences, trying to lower a hula hoop to the floor without speaking to each other. And a student example of systems thinking, this is a high school student in Morgue Valley who developed a systems thinking way of looking at the opioid crisis in her community. So she began to think about core sources of a problem, and then looked at other parts of the system that were connected and feedback that created additional problems. Another way of the movement that is expanding is the use of outdoor space, outdoor classrooms, and thinking about what parts of their nature surrounds them to make them who they are and how they can have an impact on it. Another way of bringing some of these big ideas of sustainability is looking at product life cycles, which is actually a concept I learned about from Ray Anderson. And here, these students are looking at the life cycle of paper. They look at the life cycle of almost everything in their classroom, bringing kids into the real world to understand not only what their impact is, but how they can make a difference. Building bioswales in New York City to help with stormwater runoff. And growing vertical gardens, again, in a city where gardens are limited. I wanted to include this image because sustainability goes across disciplines, as we know. And this is a 6th grade algebra class learning slope intercept by measuring the slope of their school and trying to figure out why it floods so frequently. Understanding rate over time by looking at a storm drain and figuring out how much water it can absorb. And studying the Newton Creek and a Superfund site in a social studies class to learn the history of their community. So our challenge is mostly one of scale and time, but there's good news because some of the largest school districts in our country are pursuing sustainability at the highest level. In New York City, with 1,100 New York public schools, every one of them is required to have a sustainability coordinator. And the district provides training for them in understanding these concepts and ideas and ways that they can bring them into the curriculum. That's 1.1 million students who can be reached. LA, likewise, has a district-wide sustainability initiative. It came out of the facilities and operations, and then they realized, oh, aha, there's an opportunity to connect what's happening with the facilities and sustainability and what our students are learning in the classroom. So that's quite a large reach, too. If we come back to this structure or framework for how to approach this work and remember the way campus and school facilities connects with what's happening in the community and what students are learning in the classroom, we can see the opportunity for collaboration. Collaboration from community experts, collaboration with energy companies, utility companies who are working on the EPCs or the energy performance contracts with the schools. So for me, I would like to invite everyone in the room to consider how you might participate in the movement of education for sustainability and share your expertise, whether it's at a school board meeting, a state education department meeting, or with committed teachers in a professional learning opportunity. I think the most important thing for our next generation is to see themselves as stakeholders and shareholders in the future. Because I think our best bet comes from the students, and K-12 education is, in my mind, a major, major lever for change. So thank you all for joining me today.